All right, we got a special guest. Come on up, Ben. This is Ben Evans. And if I told you much more, I would be telling you more than I know. So, Ben, it's all yours.
Yeah. Well, I'm from Heritage Action. How many of y'all know what Heritage Foundation is?
Almost everybody.
So Heritage Foundation, great think tank out of DC. They come up with great conservative policy on the full spectrum of conservative issues. They have been operating since about 1973, and when the healthcare legislation was going on, they would go into an office with a congressman, and they'd be followed up by a bunch of different lobbies right afterwards. And so what Heritage realized was they needed an action side that could go in and actively lobby Congress on conservative issues. And just so you all know, there's about 33,000 lobbyists in DC. If you count up the 535 legislators that are there, that's over 50 lobbyists per legislator that's up in DC. So a lot of what we do at Heritage Action, our goal is to turn you all into citizen lobbyists. We want you to be as informed as the lobbyists that are up there in DC. We want you to be as informed as the congressman, so that when you call them up or contact them in any way, you guys are as informed, and the congressman will listen to you because you know your stuff. That's pretty much the main goal of what Heritage Action does, and we do this through our scorecard. The way the scorecard works is we do key votes in Congress. So when there's a bill up that promotes a conservative cause, or when there's a bill that completely works against that, we will key vote that issue, and that's how we score these guys in DC. Last session in Arkansas, let's see, well, I'll go ahead and just show you the Sentinel chart right here. Basically, all the congressmen that scored over 90% with our scorecard are marked on here. There's about 6 senators and about 20-some House members. As you can see, there's nobody from Arkansas on that list. There's nobody from Missouri, where I'm from. Illinois managed to get one out of the Chicago area, surprisingly enough. And Texas only has one, which surprised me when I was down in Dallas not too long ago. We score everything that has to do with conservative issues, the full spectrum of conservatism. So in the recent vote in the Senate on the budget, I believe there was an amendment that we would not fund the United Nations until China got away from its abortion policy. Or last session, Senator Blunt from Missouri had an amendment up that was to allow doctors who for conscience reasons decided they didn't want to issue certain birth control or abortion services didn't have to. So that was one bill that came up. And then we go all the way over to the fiscal issues too. The fiscal cliff deal that got passed in the wee hours of New Year's Day, that's one of the issues we worked on. Ended up being a 2% tax increase across the board, not any sort of spending cut whatsoever. And then the money that they made from that was spent a couple weeks later when they passed the Sandy relief bill. I think that was pretty much all of the money that they raised over the fiscal cliff deal was spent in less than a month. And that's the way things are going on. But what we do with this scorecard is we sort of put in your hands the ability to know what votes are coming up. We always hear about the big things up there. We don't always hear about the little things. So I'm going to give you guys 2 examples of some of the little things that you may not know about. Has anybody ever heard of the Mike Salmon rule? Nobody here? Let me give you a little background in the House. The way the House works, the way the Senate works, is a bill comes up, they debate it. There's some sort of loose rules in the Senate about how that comes about. It goes through committee, they debate it on the floor. There's no limit on debate. That's why you have the filibuster. And it comes to a vote in a certain process. The House is much more structured. Every bill goes through committee, and then when it's ready to come out of committee, it goes to the Rules Committee. And what the Rules Committee does is they set limits on debate. So they say, 25 minutes debate for it, 25 minutes debate against it. This is the date it'll be on. This is the process that'll happen. Well, during Dennis Hastert, when he was Speaker of the House from, I believe it was 2000 to 2006, he had a rule that nothing should come out of the Rules Committee that didn't promote what the majority in the House supported. So anything that was a bad fiscal bill, anything that was maybe for restricting gun rights or anything like that should not be voted on by Republicans in the Rules Committee and then voted on in the House in general. That rule sort of disappeared under Boehner's Congress. And Mike Salmon, who's a congressman out of Arizona, I believe, wants to bring that rule back. And so we've been promoting that issue I think that would be a good one for you guys to talk to your House members about, to support the salmon rule, and you can find that on the website. And pretty much just, for instance, if the Senate were to pass restrictions, universal gun registration or something along those lines, I think we all agree that borders on unconstitutional right there to begin with. But if the Senate were to pass something like that, if the salmon rule were in place, that bill would never reach the House floor. Or at least we would know which Republicans are not genuine in their support of the Second Amendment. So that's why that rule is important. That's one of the things we put out there. Another one, we all saw the budget debate going back and forth. We all know about the Ryan budget. We heard about it before. Originally it was balancing in 30 years, which I don't think came anywhere near close to how quickly we need to balance it. This time around it was for 10 years. And it didn't really go as far as we thought it should at all. It doesn't really defund Obamacare at all. It doesn't address a lot of the spending problems we have. Well, there's a group called the Republican Study Committee. Have any of you guys heard of that one? Republican Study Committee is a great sort of conservative study group for Congress. And they came up with a 4-year budget that balances in 4 years. So the Ryan budget balances in 10. The Republican Study Committee put up a budget that balances in 4. That the House had a vote on this, and Democrats didn't vote at all. So it was just Republicans voting on this. And I think the vote was about 104 to 120 something on the Republican side against the Republican Study Committee budget. So we all know about the Ryan budget, and a lot of you may think that's a good step in the right direction, but you may not have known that most of our House members passed up on that better budget that balanced in 4 years. And from the last that I looked at the scorecards, the only congressman from Arkansas that voted for that was Cotton, and there was only 2 from Missouri out of our 8 congressmen that voted for that. I don't believe there was anybody in Illinois. So we've got a bunch of guys down there that say they're conservatives. They say, a big one is that they all say they're going to repeal Obamacare, and they're not doing anything else to defund or work towards that. That's the more information that we get out and some of the key votes that we have. Of the Arkansas guys, and this is from last session, but last session, and this isn't the final count, but Womack ended up at about a 52% with us. And then, of course, Mike Ross was down in 4 before. He was at 33%. So you've got a big improvement for Cotton there. But the problem is we are tough with our scorecard. We score everything, like I said. We cover fiscal issues, social issues, limited government, treaties, rules, everything like that. And so a lot of congressmen are a little wary of our scorecard. But the thing is if they know that their constituents like you guys are supporting these issues, and you can talk to them about it and let them know that they're going to get the support if they take the tough votes, that score can improve. I think it's pretty unacceptable that Arkansas didn't have anybody over 60% last session, and Missouri didn't have anybody over 82% before. Both, I think, solid conservative states that aren't getting the representation that they deserve from their congressmen. And a big part of that is us getting into the accountability side. Elections are extremely important. We have to be involved in them. We got to get the right candidates. But if we don't do the work in between the elections with these guys, then we're never going to get the representation that we deserve, or the representation that we were promised. And so that's a lot of what Heritage Action does. We get the information out to you guys so you know exactly what's going on in D.C. You don't have to pick through the news stories, you go through the congressional record, figure out what votes are coming up. We'll give you a warning ahead of time so that you can call these guys up directly, write a letter to the editor. If you do Facebook or Twitter, do something on that. Anything that you can do makes a difference. Today I've got some materials for you up here, including the Sentinel chart. Just so you guys know that we are getting some movement. There's about 6 senators on here and about 20 House members that scored over 90%. Of those 6, Jim DeMint in the Senate, Jim DeMint moved over to take over the Heritage Foundation, which I think is going to be a net positive for conservative work in general. And Tim Scott took over, and I'm betting he'll score pretty well in the Senate too. We've added Ted Cruz down in Texas. And I think there's a number of states where we should get some better conservative representation as well. And same thing in the House. One of the guys from the House that scored high, Jeff Flake out of Arizona, he moved on to the Senate, so we got another strong conservative voice in the Senate with Marco Rubio and Rand Paul and Mike Lee. All these guys are scoring up over 90% with us. I've also got some article here for you from the Washington Post, kind of a little bit more about what Heritage Action does. There's some material from Heritage Action here. What I would encourage you guys all to do, and and why I'm mainly here, is to sign up with Heritage Action for one of these cards and leave them with me. What I do every week is I put out an update every week on Monday or Tuesday to let you know what's going on in Congress that week. So ahead of time, you'll already know what votes they're going to have, what's probably going to come up. I put the information on that email for you so you have it in front of you right away, and suggestions for what you can do with that. But you'll also get information from Heritage Action on other things that are going on up there, other bills. One of my big ones is the Farm Bill, and you guys talked a little bit about it with food stamps. Farm Bill is only 20% Farm Bill. It's 80% food stamps, and it's nearly $1 trillion that they're trying to pass. One of our problems with it is there's been no reform on either side of the bill, for either food stamps or for the farm subsidies. And for most of the small farmers that I've talked to in Illinois and Missouri, they're not getting any big benefit out of the Farm Bill whatsoever. Crop insurance, I think, which is the biggest thing for small farmers, is separate from the Farm Bill, and that wasn't affected by any of the Farm Bill debate that happened last year. So 80% food stamps, 20% farm subsidies. A lot of those subsidies don't go to the small farmers that maybe really need it, and we're not getting anywhere on that. And there's Republicans that are supporting it. I think every Republican from Arkansas, all but one from Missouri, most of the guys from Illinois, they all support this. And it just blows my mind that we would get these Republicans that would be supporting a bill that covers $0.8 trillion in food stamps. And the food stamp program's blown up. I think about half the country is eligible now for food stamps. That's no longer a social welfare program. That's changing the entire culture of the United States type of program to get people on a government dole and working with the government in that way. So those are a number of the issues. I'd be happy to answer questions on any other issues that we cover, or cover anything else that you guys would want to know about it.
Those anchor babies, women come over here to have those children, and who gives them the visa to do that?
On immigration?
Is it immigration?
Are you
No, the
saying?
anchors, they come over here to have those kids so they can be born in America, and then who gives them the visa and come over here?
I think she's talking most about the ones that come from China. They come over and
Yeah,
spend it
I
down
mean,
in
it is-
hotels, and they make them.
I can't speak to specific instances. I can tell you that immigration is going to be big coming up. Marco
Yeah,
Rubio and
but
Jeff
you can't-
Flake are two of the bigger voices on it. So I listen for what those guys are
They don't
saying.
ever bring that up.
They-
Womack wouldn't, we wouldn't
Well,
even talk to me about it.
Womack may not, but
But
there are guys. This list here on the Sentinel. These are all the guys that are fighting the good fight up in D.C. And Jeff Flake, the one guy I told you about from Arizona, just got elected to the Senate. He's in that group that's working on immigration, and so is Marco Rubio.
Them eight, there's not anybody in that eight that I would trust with my babies, that's for sure.
And
And that's
out of
what
that eight,
they're messing with is our babies with
well,
us.
I'm telling you, the scorecard that we keep, and I'm telling you, it's the toughest scorecard out there. A lot of these guys know how to game all the other scorecards. Marco Rubio, 97%. Rand Paul, 97%. Mike Lee, 97%. These are all guys that are going to be working on the immigration issue, securing the border, and making sure that we deal with the illegal immigration issue in the
I'm talking
country.
about the one with Dick Durbin and
We can't do everything about everybody. We got to work with.
Graham, McCain.
So let me tell you this way, okay? There's only 6 senators on here right now. Okay? There's nobody from Arkansas, there's nobody from Missouri, there's nobody from Illinois that are on this list of senators. What we're trying to do is to grow the ranks of these senators that are scoring this high on our scorecard that actually advocate for conservative issues. And part of that process is us being informed on the bills that are coming up and being able to talk to Bozeman knowledgeably about the issue. And that's the information we want to get out to you guys so that you can actually call up Bozeman. You can tell them about the details of a bill that we've done the research on for you. And then he's got to listen to you because you know exactly what you're talking about. And if you do it, and 20 other people do it, and then 100 other people do it, then they'll start to listen to us.
Question over there, Fred?
Is it Ben?
Yeah.
Ben, I've been calling my senator and representative before they had the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Since the internet, I send them emails. Do you know how much attention they pay to me?
Yeah.
When the Republican Party calls, when the Democrat Party calls, son, that's the way they vote. Until we get the public to just
Right.
landslide,
We the
we're not
people.
making any progress. And it's the money issue, and that's all there is.
Well, we were talking
It's
about
a
this.
knee deal.
We were talking about this with Cotton earlier, because you guys had mentioned that he came in with a bunch of money he won. Now,
Where's Cotton on that,
Cotton's 100% with us so far.
where's Cotton on the, internet tax?
He's against it as far as I know.
He didn't say it.
Well,
You
that's
You
gotta
know
not-
why I said that he was
Yes.
for it?
Let's keep this at a question and answer, and go ahead, and Fred, go ahead.
Senator Rand Paul,
Mhm.
been a senator a little over 2 years now. Well, in 2011, out of his congressional budget, he turned back to the government $500,000, $500,000. Then last year, he turned back $600,000. Are there any other senators or congressmen doing the same?
That are giving up salary,
Giving up out of their budget?
office
For any
expenses. I'm not sure, but I can find out for you.
Staff.
I've got information for you guys. Whenever these sorts of questions come up, please feed them to me. I'll pass them on. Or just to tell you a little bit about our team in DC, we've got a House lobbyist, we've got a Senate lobbyist, we've got a bunch of researchers. They're doing all the work up there and passing this on to us out in the air.
One other thing, you mentioned the 3rd District Congressman Steve Womack
Mhm.
was 52%, I believe, with you all.
Yes.
So in other words, what you're saying, 48% of the time, he voted unconstitutional.
Yeah, he didn't vote for the conservative stance on the bill. And if you go online to our scorecard, what I can tell you is it's a lot more. This just gives you percentages here. Online, what we have is, we've got the bill, what the bill is about, and then our stance on the bill. So you can go through that and you can read all that pretty well.
Horace?
Is this different from the Heritage Foundation?
Yes, so the Heritage Foundation is a think tank. They can't actively lobby on political issues. So we're associated with them, but we're separate. We actively lobby Congress on conservative issues. Like I said, we've got a House lobbyist and a Senate lobbyist. They're up there every day on these issues. All of your House members should know about key votes when they come up. That's why the information that we send you out on that's important to communicate with them on, because we've already got our guys in DC talking to them. If the constituents are talking to them as well, it's going to make a difference. And it does make a difference. I can tell you, Joanne Emerson from Southeast Missouri, she was about a 44%, which is one of the lowest from Missouri. We had a few activists from south of St. Louis that were talking to her about her score on the scorecard. It riled her up enough to go to the Heritage Action Team and ask them why she's getting hassled by constituents about her score. So they sat down with her and they worked with her on that. I don't know that it improved her vote at all, but she did run for re-election, but she stepped down from that office. And I think part of that was because there were a lot of Tea Party activists, just conservative activists in general, that were using our scorecard in that district outside of the election to point out that she was not the conservative that she said she was. And now I think Southeast Missouri is going to get a lot better conservative representation. I think a little bit to do with that accountability off election.
Joe?
You asking us to join
You can,
something?
yeah, I'm asking you to join and get the information from us. It doesn't cost anything. All you're getting is information. You're getting the tools that you need to be a citizen lobbyist. That's the goal here. A lot of us do this stuff already anyway, at least with our, at the local level, where we go to the state capitol, we lobby up there. I think you guys, a lot of you have gone up to the capitol before, haven't you? You go up to Little Rock pretty regularly?
Not very regularly. I don't know if anybody in here does.
I've been one time.
Oh, yeah, but I mean regularly, we don't have, we got Joanne and people like that.
Okay. Well, I can tell you from working in Missouri, from what I found, is that our legislature has become a lot more responsive as our grassroots groups have started visiting Jefferson City to talk with their legislators. It's the same concept with Heritage Action. The more that you're in communication with them, the more likely they are to listen to you. The more likely they are to listen and hear you out on why they should vote conservative on an issue. And that's pretty much what we're doing. You sign up, you get the information. If there's a bill on there that you don't really care much about, you don't have to do anything about it. I'd encourage you to work on all of them, because I think that we push a pretty solid conservative stance across the board. But we give you that information so that you can use that and hold Congress accountable.
Patrick?
I like your work, I like what you're doing. My one hesitation in this is that over the last few years, I've joined several organizations. I'm part of the Tea Party Patriots, I'm part of Freedom Works, I'm part of Freedom Connector, of course, the NRA, I'm a member of the NRA, and so forth. And I've learned that the first thing that happens as soon as you join these organizations and get on their email list is you get hit twice a week with solicitations for donations. I understand that all this takes money. Trust me, I understand that. I don't have the money to be sending out $20, $50 a week to all these different organizations. I just can't do it.
Well, most of the funding for Heritage Action comes from the development team from Heritage.
Actually, Heritage Organization's another one that's sending me emails and asking me for money.
Well, yeah, you have to, yeah, there's a membership fee, I think, for Heritage Foundation. There are emails sent out, honestly, from Heritage Action every once in a while for money. Most of the stuff that we send out is just our blog. The stuff that I send out weekly is simply information on what's coming up on Congress from week to week. And you're free to unsubscribe anytime if you feel like.
I don't mind being a lobbyist. I don't mind writing and calling and contacting and doing the legwork that way. I just don't have the money to be sending funds into an organization.
And that's, I understand that, and truthfully, the vast majority of Americans can't afford to sort of add funding to these organizations like that. What we're looking to do is give you the tools to be the strongest activist you can be with your congressman at the national level.
The last time I wrote an email to Congressman Womack, I actually had a call from somebody in his office who called my home. I wasn't there at the time, left a message that he wanted to speak to me on this, gave me a number that I called him back, but I never did. But I am able to get his attention. I know he reads them. But if I can be more effective, and that's have more ammunition that I can throw at him, I'd be glad to do that.
That's the main goal, and so I'm the regional coordinator for the area. I've got this part of Arkansas, northern half of Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois. If you're writing to your congressman and you're getting a good response, let me know. I'll pass that on to our team in DC. They'll talk with that congressman, let them know their constituents are happy with them. If you find that you're not getting a response on an issue, or you're finding they're not being completely truthful with you on an issue, again, if you contact me, I will get in touch with our team in DC, and we will start to address that issue with the congressman. It works both ways there.
Color in the corner.
Thank you. As you pointed out, I have been, I think a lot of people have been very disappointed with Bozeman and Womack. And when I have contacted them, you get the form letter back. In fact, I've gotten aggravated and said, don't send me your form letter, just try to think what I'm telling you. But are they responding? I mean, do you get a feel locally? Are these people concerned about what your grade, or are they being influenced at all?
Yeah, I think so, and Joanne Emerson is the perfect example in Missouri.
Yeah.
What happened was, and this was even before I had moved into the region, not from St. Louis, but before I was working with Heritage Action in the region, folks already knew about this scorecard, and they've been sharing this. And the vast majority of people that are voting in elections don't pay attention to all these issues. But when they had the scorecard in their hand and they could say, Joanne Emerson only scores at 44%, that's how conservative she is. I think that made a difference, and the guy who ran against him, Bob Parker, ran against her twice. The first time, he got a decent amount of support from Tea Party folks. The second time around, that number grew, probably, I think it doubled from the amount of votes that he got. And this is one of the tools that we're using. We don't always get directly involved in elections at Heritage Action, but this accountability side of it does make a difference. And as more people in Womack's district are aware that he's only scoring at 52%, then you guys either have, you've got two shots here. You've either got the opportunity to push him in the right direction conservatively, or you've got a scorecard that somebody else can run against him on. You've got both those options, and part of that is letting people know about the scorecard, letting them know how conservative, because we all know that just having an R behind your name does not mean you're going to be a conservative, not at all.
Ben, let me ask a question right quick, then I'll get back to you. Just recently, I want to say Randy Alexander, who's a state rep, had put forth something. Anyhow, the Americans for Prosperity, who you know and I know, put out a bill that were opposed to that. And I called Randy, I've known him for a little while, and his answer was that a lot of the Republican state reps were moving away from American for Prosperity on their scorecard system. And I know it could be because they're not getting a good report, they're gonna change classrooms because the other teachers will favor. Is that happening with this some? Do the congressman representatives, are they concerned about your scorecard?
Yeah, they haven't,
haven't.
and some of them will say they aren't.
Okay.
Blaine Lukemeyer is another one from up in Missouri, who scored about 50%. I had an activist go to him, and he told them heritage didn't matter, the scorecard doesn't matter, which of course set our team in motion up in DC, working with those guys.
All right, Joe, you had a question back to back?
Is all of your work, is it just on the federal level, or is it at
Yes.
the state level?
So we don't have, I know AFP has an AFP in Arkansas that works on the state issues, they've got one in Missouri as well. What I can tell you about the different organizations is we all cover different things, and you were saying before, you get stuff from just about everybody. But there's sort of benefit from all. We work in accountability, so our main goal is to hold Congress accountable on specific legislation. AFP works a lot on issue-oriented stuff at the state level or the national level. You've got Club for Growth, which works solely on economic issues. You can sort of get a different little piece of the pie from all of those on how you can hold them accountable. And I think once you put all that together, you've got a whole arsenal to work with in dealing with your congressman.
Barbara, you had a question?
Yes, I'd like to speak up on behalf of John Bozeman and Steve Womack. They both have offices here in Fort Smith, fully staffed, Monday through Friday. And if anyone wants to get information to them or to find out from them information on an issue, all you have to do is pick up the phone and call them, or else go to their office. Womack's office is down on 6th Street, and John Bozeman's office is on Garrison Avenue. So it's really easy in this area to get through to them.
And right now they're in recess, so they should be around. After last week and this week they were in recess.
And I found that they're very responsive. If you call them about something, they will get back with you.
I've had very good luck with them. I don't say that they go along with what I call them about, because and let me give you an example. I won't take much of your time. I know you said, or somebody said about Rand Paul. You said Rand Paul gave back $500,000. Way back before Bozeman, when we had Pryor and Lincoln, I used to send them emails all the time and say, you're bankrupting us. You can cut your office budget. That's easy. You got control of that. I never got nothing back. I sent it to Bozeman. I sent it to Womack. The same thing. I get nothing back. My deal is if they are serious about cutting stuff that they can cut themselves and they don't have to go to Congress or House, do it. Show Bob that you are serious about cutting spending, and then I'll believe you. Until you do that, you're tooting in the wind. You got a question?
They've been on this same issue. Every time that these committees, they get money, they get money for their yearly balance and all that stuff. And every time, if you look at all the budgets, they all have money at the end of the year. And they know that 3% or 6% or whatever it is if they're going to be raised is raised. And they start spending money like crazy, so they won't only lose the money, but they cut the money.
Get the money next year.
And another thing on this, what he was talking about a while ago, I get anywhere from 4 to 12 letters every day in the mail, 5 days a week, 6 days a week sometimes, and wanting money. And the trouble is, there's so many duplicates in there. All of them, these are all for veterans, these are all for health care, these are all for everything that's imaginable. The thing of it is, we need some consolidation. If we could have some consolidation.
Well, that's what I was telling you. We work on different, so we work on the accountability side. AFP is working to promote specific issues that come up, whether it's school choice or something like that. We are in the accountability. That is the main focus of Heritage Action. We just want to influence Congress.
But your oversight, though, see, your oversight over everything. That's something different. I'm talking about there's so many different veterans groups that ask me for money.
I see.
One after the other one. I get, like he's talking about phone calls, I get calls.
Well, I'm telling you now, we'd love for you to donate if you could, but there's no need to donate any money specifically to Heritage Action. We just want to provide you the information to hold Congress accountable.
Joe, did you get your question in while ago?
Yes, I did.
All right,
This
Barbara?
gentleman back here.
Oh,
had a
I'm
question.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I missed you twice.
So-
Go ahead.
This is about financing the federal budget.
Uh-huh.
I understand that in 5 months, if they don't come up with some everything's gonna fall apart. Right.
There are those issues that came up. Continuing resolution came up last month, which is basically because we haven't had a budget in the last 4 years, they just vote this money up again and again and again. One of the things that we pushed for was defunding Obamacare, that if we were going to pass a continuing resolution, that there had to be defunding for Obamacare in it. And I think Senator Cruz had an amendment up in the Senate about that same issue. There was a letter that circulated, about 30 House members signed it. I'm not sure if anybody from Arkansas did or not. I'd have to go back and look at it. I know that no member of Congress from Missouri and no member of Congress from Illinois signed on to that letter. And that's one of those issues that you can contact your congressman about, is, and I'm sure every single one of them here in Arkansas ran on repealing Obamacare. So you take this letter to them, and you show it to their office, and you say, hey, you were all about repealing Obamacare, but where are you on the issue of defunding? You've done nothing for it so far. And that comes up in the budget and the continuing resolutions that come up. As far as in the 5 months' time, I think if they don't pass a budget, then the continuing resolution has to be passed again sometime in the fall, is I believe what happens.
September, I think they funded through September.
Yeah. And so there's budgets up right now and here's the big thing about that House budget is we're going to have a tough time passing any of those Republican budgets in the Senate. So why didn't every single Republican vote for the 4-year Republican Study Committee budget? Why did they support the Ryan budget if they know they're probably not going to be able to pass that through the Senate? They had no reason not to support the more conservative bill.
Let's go over here, Fred.
A couple of years ago, we had a partial audit of the Federal Reserve. Where do y'all stand on that? There is a bill now in the House to call for a full audit.
I think depending on what the bill says, there was one that came up last summer, and we were supporting it at first, and then there was an issue with how they were going to do the accounting. There's a lot of these little intricacies in the bills that we don't always know about. We hear about an audit of the Fed bill, but there might be a provision in there that just totally guts what it was actually going to do to begin with. And I think that's what happened with the last audit bill that came up. We're for those sorts of issues, depending on what is actually written into the language of that bill if it comes up.
Where do y'all stand on getting out of the United Nations?
Like I said, we just scored that amendment, which would have taken all taxpayer funds out of the United Nations, as long as there's countries like China supporting abortion policy. We've pretty much key voted against every single UN treaty that I can think of. Last year we had the Law of the Sea Treaty, and we defeated that. There's the UN Small Arms Treaty that's coming up. I'm pretty sure we've got the votes to beat that one. And so we've been working against every single one of those treaties. We do key vote as well, and that's a big one that you can get Bozeman on if he's not supporting it. Roy Blunt, who we have in Missouri, doesn't have the greatest score, but he's been solid on all the UN treaties. And if you can get them going on one issue, you might be able to push them in the right direction on other issues.
Barbara?
This can help Leonard and others who get solicitations for contributions. All you have to do is take that solicitation notice there and write on it, please take my name off your list. And it will cost you a stamp to send it back into them, and that'll be the last you hear of it.
And we're all pretty much email from the Heritage Action side. So that all's going through
Let me
email.
ask that question. How many in here are pretty much all email folks? I mean, do you, all of you pretty much, you're not,
I get email, I get a lot of mail too.
but you do email. I guess I know, yeah, he don't have email, but.
No, but I do a lot of calling.
Yeah, and you
Well,
know.
Collins do it too, and you've got my card here. So if you don't have, you know, we do a lot of our work through email. And if you want to get the information from Heritage Action directly, you'd have to sign up for email. But I've got my number too. Feel free to call me anytime if you ever have any questions.
Patrick?
Yeah, just a quick question. One of the things that I have a hard time with is finding voting records of all of our congressional critters. And when they vote on a big bill where they've stood up for our constitutional rights or conservative issues, they go out there and announce it, loud and wide. But the little stuff, all the other stuff, I can't find anything on. Do you provide that information?
Yeah, and this is the great thing about the scorecard online. If you go online, we have last session, because we've only had the scorecard since last session. So if you go on last session, you can pull up Arkansas, you click a map, Arkansas comes up, all the congressmen, senators, and reps come up. You click on their name for the session. You can go through each of the key votes that we had over the last 2 years. All those votes, you can cut down through, see where they're not voting for it. And that's actually a really effective way to talk to your congressman. It's not only to go on them on a specific issue, but if you go with them with a vote and you say, you didn't vote for this bill. You've made campaign statements, you've made statements in the past that you supported this issue. And I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt most of the time, but right here, you voted incorrectly, and I want to know why you made that decision. It's a real effective tool in dealing with that way. And when they vote well, it's the same thing. We don't always want to be down on them. It helps to show them support as well. And I think that's the quickest thing to turn some of them off, is to always come at them with negatives and never give them the benefit of the doubt they did vote right on a bill.
Have you considered anything in your thing about defunding the United Nations?
Defunding the United Nations, I would imagine that, and I can't tell you the specific policy from Heritage, but I would imagine we'd be pretty supportive of that.
I think that's...
And we're fixing to cut this off, go ahead.
Bob, I don't have any more questions for Ben at this time, but I'd like to report some good news. You know, here in Arkansas, the state legislature, the Senate and the House voted recently for this voter ID law. Well, Mr. Beebe vetoed it, our governor. And so then the Senate came back and passed and overrode his veto. Then it was in the House. Well, I got an email late this afternoon from the Washington Tea Party reporting that it has passed in the House, it is now law.
Yeah, it was only like 52 to 48 in the House.
If I could say something about that, because this came up in Missouri, actually. A lot of this stuff's being done under the Real ID Act. And I'm just speaking on behalf of Missouri Tea Parties and what we experience, not so much as Heritage Action right now. What we found out was Missouri made it against the law for the Real ID Act to work, and that was to give you one ID form that worked for everything. And that's what the federal government was doing. It got passed in 2005. The idea was to fight terrorism and illegal immigration. Well, what's now happening in Missouri is the Department of Revenue, when you go in to renew your license or to renew your conceal and carry, they scan that document and they send it off to a private corporation that then sends that information to the Department of Homeland Security. So ID stuff can be good, but it's a double-edged blade there. It works both ways, so you got to be careful sometimes with issues like that. I think that's what we found in Missouri is all of a sudden we go in, they're taking biometric data from us, they're sending our information on our conceal and carry, which the sheriff is the only person who's supposed to determine whether you can have your conceal and carry or not. The Department of Revenue is supposed to look at that card from the sheriff, and that's the end of it. But they've been recording it now. So that's an issue you got to work with. And on other state issues that we've worked with at Heritage Action, Medicaid expansion, state healthcare exchanges, school choice, we've all been pretty supportive of the school choice and stopping Medicaid expansion and state insurance exchanges because those have been, basically the Obama administration doesn't have the money to implement Obamacare on its own. So it's been relying on the states to pass parts of it through the Medicaid expansion and through health exchanges. And both of those, we've been fighting in Missouri. Illinois is not having as much luck. I don't know what's going on here in Arkansas right now. But that's a big part of moving Obamacare forward. If the states stand strong on those issues and don't pass those issues, we've taken a major step in blocking the full implementation of Obamacare.
Arkansas so far has not done it.
Okay.
They are civil. All right. We're going to stop, and it's 7 o'clock, and
You want one of these if you guys
yeah,
want.
we'll pass that here in a few minutes. Give Ben a hand, and thank you for coming. That's all the pay he gets out there, so whatever we can get. One thing I want to encourage you again, and I know you heard Ben say this several times. If you don't contact these folks that are voting for you, you ain't got a right to bitch. You understand? If you're not contacting them, good or bad, and letting them know how you feel, to me, you don't need to go to the coffee shop and start writing. You just need to say, shut it to me.
You know, that we went twice here, Womack, you know, and I went twice.